Welcome to Therapy, Coaching, and Dreams. My name is D. Kelley, and I'm your co-host along with Jim Shalley. And we are a coach and a therapist who love exploring personality and all of the implications that has for relationships, vocation, personal growth. We are in season 2, and we are given a particular emphasis this season to the use of dreams and other tools to gain greater self-awareness, understand ourselves in unique ways. And I'd love to start off with something I've referred to and talked about in a couple of episodes, but I'd like to start off naming the 10 principles that I use in dream work. And then Jim's going to join in and we're going to talk about a couple of these. The 10 principles are these. First, protect your sleep. It's essential to your health, and it is the doorway through which dreams come. Second is value your dreams. Most of us, at least in our culture, consider them the white noise or artifacts of evolution that just continue, and we don't pay attention to them. I suggest maybe you shift your posture a bit and value your dreams. Practice remembering your dreams is principle number 3. You can increase your ability to remember. Many people don't remember them at all. And there are some simple steps to take to remember your dreams. Fourth is to learn the language of dreams, and not just the general language, though that's important, and the symbols that are often involved in dreams, but your personal dialect. Dreams are incredibly subjective, and that's what makes them perfect for reflection and personal growth. They are unique to you. They are created out of your psyche. They have a biological purpose to them, and they are involved in emotional regulation. Pay attention to them, but the images have a unique subjective nature. So learn not only the language of dreams, but your personal dialect. Set aside dream dictionaries. They probably don't help you much at this point in the journey, though paying attention to symbols can. The 6th is pay attention to the emotional content of the previous 2 days. Dreams often point us toward emotional weight that we are carrying, and the emphasis is typically bent toward the previous 2 days of our journey. So pay attention to that emotional content that you've had. Number 7 is to do this with someone else. It's always helpful to be engaged with somebody else because they can ask questions, see blind spots. Make sure it's somebody who's safe. Number 8 is familiarize yourself with a theory of personality and see how it might apply to your dream work and to your personal growth. Number 9 is pay attention to the shadow and the ways in which it shows up in dreams and shows up in your life. And then the 10th principle is take action. What kind of action would be the appropriate response to the things that you are learning about yourself? So these are the 10 principles of dream work that I use over and over again. And we're going to jump into a couple of these and take it a little bit deeper in terms of how we might put some things into practice in our own life. Hope you enjoy this episode. Jim, I've mentioned a couple of times the 10 principles of dream work, and we've talked about a few of the principles, but I'd love to jump to number 6 and number 7 of my list of how to do dream work. Number 6 is pay attention to the emotional content or the emotional weight of the last couple of days, because I'm convinced that dreams, to a large extent, this isn't all that they do, but they try and navigate the emotional weight that we have experienced in the last couple of days to try and regulate our emotional capacity and to process memories so that they can be used in the future. And so it really an emotional mindfulness that occurs, which I think if dreams do nothing more than make you emotionally mindful, then that's a great
Absolutely.
thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the challenges is if you don't have access to a therapist or to a coach or whatever, you have one inside your head in that
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So that if you really get disciplined, and I know it's a hassle sometimes to wake up and write your dreams down, but if you do that, it can certainly be reminiscent of a coach or a therapist, something to process.
Yeah. So that's a great bridge. I appreciate you saying that. To number 7 in the principles, and that is do dream work with someone. And I want to clarify that dream work is so subjective and it's intensely personal, and a lot of the work is done on your own, but there's something so valuable in meeting with somebody to talk about things. So that can be a therapist, it can be a coach, it can be a priest, it can be a friend, it can be a dream group. There are any number of ways, but it needs to be safe space where you can say some of the craziness of the
Yeah,
dreams.
absolutely, because people some dreams I have several clients who will come in and say, "I had a really crazy dream last night," and they'll talk about that. So, yeah, you're right, doing it with somebody else and having the safety to be able to do that. Because
Yeah.
to your point, you can take dreams and it's such a subjective reality some ways. Some people wanna take it externally and do make some interesting choices based upon what they think the dream said. Obviously, our bias, or at least my bias, is it's an internal journey saying something about me. So,
Yeah, exactly. I had somebody 2 weeks ago. They were willing to tell me that they had the dream, but it was so intensely emotional that immediately after sharing the dream, the response was, "But I don't wanna talk about it." Go, "Okay, I will respect that," and I did respect it, but that's one of the issues. They can
did you wanna
become
act it out, kinda like pantomime it? Would you
That's right. But the r response to dreams can be so emotionally triggering that somebody might feel like they're not ready to make the content public.
Yeah, especially if they struggle being vulnerable anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big deal, so
Yeah.
hmm.
So, talk to me for a few moments, and not about dreams, but just issues in general. Talk about the advantage of stepping into therapy or coaching, stepping into an arrangement where you're talking to somebody that feels safe. And I think sometimes one of the advantages of therapy is talking to somebody who's objective. They don't know all of your history and you
Absolutely.
can talk
Yeah.
about it with them. So, just kind of the notion of why, if you can afford therapy or a coach, what are some of the real upsides of meeting with somebody about your personal journey?
That's a great question. It's like, the value of finding out that thoughts that you have in your head may not be all that great. And so
Yeah.
we're tied into our own thinking style, so we oftentimes don't even know something is being really, distorted or dysfunctional because it's what we were raised with, it's what we know, and we don't it's like people raised in a kind of a crazy house. They go visit a friend's house, and it's like, "Oh, you people, like, talk to each other, and you're kinda nice to each other, and this is weird." So, yeah, it's kinda like that. It's like, can I really trust my frame of reference? If you have nobody to bounce that off of, whether it be a friend, a therapist, whoever, a therapist is uniquely or a coach is uniquely designed in my mind, to your point, they don't know your history, they may not know a lot about you, and so they're able to really give you feedback on how they experience you in the moment. I use that frame a lot in therapy. I'll just simply say, if they get if they react strongly to something I might say, I'll say, "That's just how I'm experiencing you at this moment. Could be different, but that's how I'm experiencing you, and that's through my own filters as well, but that's how you're coming across." The value of that, I think, speaks for itself in the sense of trying to just see if the way I think really, is healthy, and one of my tenets really is flexibility of thinking. I've gotta be able to hold opposite thoughts, and not decide one is right and one is wrong, but to had opposing to hold opposing thoughts.
You've mentioned flexible thinking before, and I completely agree with the value of um, nurturing that in a person's life. And I think that one of the great advantages of a therapist or a coach, as you just said, is that they pose a different viewpoint. They present, hopefully in a very safe environment, a way for you to look at an issue in a
Yeah,
different way.
just like to say, what if you looked at it this way?
Mhm.
It's like that
Yeah.
the latest book by, I forget his name now, but he wrote a book about reframe your brain. But
Mm,
the basic concept is that, how you look at something is profound. And
yeah.
you can literally choose how to look at something, even though it may not feel like it at the time. I think a therapist or a coach can help someone bridge that gap to see the possibility of that. Whereas if I'm left to my own, I may not be able to get out of that mindset of, well, this is the right way to think. And that's why rapport or trust or allowing someone to speak truly willingly is the most important part of coaching or therapy. Because if I don't do that, if I'm not willing, then the client will fight back, and which may not be a good or bad, but sometimes they'll fight back because they're not as open to the reframe as they probably need to be at times.
Yeah. I like that a lot. Thank you. I would also, earlier you gave an example of somebody who need to be challenged in the way they think to see a different perspective.
Mhm.
Um, in a similar vein, but I feel like it's kind of on the other end of the spectrum, is someone who comes into therapy or coaching and they are panicked that the thoughts they have are like weird, way off the charts,
Yeah.
abnormal.
Yeah. Mhm.
And to normalize some of those things can bring such a relief and decrease the anxiety level to say, Yeah, that sounds really human to me. Let's look
Yep.
as to why you might have that thought."
Absolutely. Or even to get them to say it out loud. Sometimes
Yes, 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 yes.
that alone will be like, "Oh, the world didn't end? I said it out loud." Yeah, the world didn't end yet, so
Very often, and we've talked about the individuation process from parents, from a job, from faith, a church, to say something that goes against your faith upbringing, particularly if you've internalized
oh, geez,
the language of a church or the language of your parents, feels kind of frightening to some people. And to
yeah.
provide a safe space to actually discuss that is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, just the power of early on in my life, having the moment when I had a thought that was completely opposed to everything I'd been trained to think, and the lightning didn't strike, and I kept breathing. Um, that was a profound moment in my early 30s where I thought, "Oh, I can think that thought?" Yeah. I think to your point, well said, is like to normalize it and go, okay, yeah, we all have thoughts. Which ones, which ones do you want to hold on to in the context of your life?
Yeah. Or at the very least, which ones can we just talk about right now?
Absolutely. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think also the advantage of therapist, a coach, a spiritual guide. I think one of the advantages there is for somebody who doesn't have a history with me, they often have the ability to ask questions that I haven't considered or I haven't considered in a long time.
Yes.
L-
Yep.
Like a good friend or a spouse, they've learned what subjects not to address, and so they don't bring them
Absolutely
up
true.
anymore. And I think it's very advantageous to have somebody who just follows whatever comments you've made with, I'm curious. I hear you say this. And that simple question can send you on a new pathway of thought that can carry you for months of growth.
Absolutely true. And the key ingredient is there's no agenda. It just that was the question I asked. I don't care if you answer it, don't answer it. It's not there's not a right or wrong answer. That
Yeah,
safety, emotional safety is crucial. That's why there's so many um, requirements of therapy and coaching in some ways.
absolutely. As there ought to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So someone comes to a point. I'm going to take several scenarios and I'll tell you them ahead of time. Um, there's a plateau in therapeutic work. Almost inevitable if somebody stays in it long enough, feels like they plateau. Um,
Getting
I,
getting getting them to admit that if there's a really strong relationship with the coach or the therapist can be challenging. 'Cause they
So,
they
okay.
they like the conversations. I'm probably taking it in a different direction. They like the conversation, and they feel like they're not making progress, so it's in my opinion, it's incumbent upon the therapist or the coach to say, "How are we doing? Are we making progress?" So that you kind of ask those questions to make sure there's still movement, because sometimes they'll be hesitant to bring it up because they like the conversations enough. And then on the other hand, there are some that are very bold, and they'll say, "We ain't making enough progress." And I'll say, "'Cause you ain't doing what I tell you to do."
Enough said, let's move on.
Exa
Uh,
exactly. You're stuck, I'm not stuck. I'm gonna go
okay.
home.
So this, let's stay here then with this.
Okay.
A plateau in therapy, and you just described two very different personalities.
Mhm,
One who is bold and steps into those conversations and is willing to say that they're not getting enough. And then there's another person who is so invested kind of relationally in that
mhm.
moment that they're hesitant to say anything. So let's start with the very bold person. They
And
feel like
they're
they're,
usually again, they're usually back to our other framework. They're usually dynamic, so they're gonna
yes,
bring
oh,
yeah,
absolutely. The
yeah,
dynamic steps into those places with relatively little hesitation,
absolutely.
because they've learned that that's one of the formulas for success in their life. So they repeat a pattern that's been successful in the past.
Yep.
So they step into it. What's a response that a person like that might hear that will actually help them move past that plateau?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's like saying basically, "So, is there something in your life that you know you should be doing, but you're not?"
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah. And even dynamic people will have that. 'Cause they can use their dynamic energy way over here doing something, but not what they really need to be doing.
Yeah, it's like a deflection.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that brings up such a really good conversation because it's almost always true, and that they usually can identify much more easily than the static personality where they should be what they "I should be doing this." Or
And
so then why aren't you doing it? Yeah.
I've also found that sometimes with those types of individuals, they will attempt, consciously or unconsciously, to guide the conversation around that, past that internal work. Like they'll nod when you confront it or bring it up, but then very
Oh, yeah.
quickly the conversation goes someplace else.
Yeah, that's very true.
And you wait about 3, 4 minutes and you go, so do you want to go back
Ah,
to what we're
"You wanna put the car in reverse? Let's go back."
okay. So somebody who is really reluctant to bring it up, and like I know you said, a good therapist will notice that and ask the question.
Mhm.
But let's say there is this sense of plateau that's taken place, and somebody is hesitant to be that confrontive or direct. What do you suggest?
Oh, if it's acknowledged that we're at a plateau, then you simply ask the easy question, which is, "Are you okay with that?"
Mm,
Now, interesting, sometimes they'll say, "Well, no," because they wanna stay in therapy and grow. Others will go, maybe I am." Well, then they have to confront, have we achieved all we need to achieve in the coaching or the therapy
yeah.
relationship? Mhm.
Yeah. Great response. Thanks,
And
Jim.
most of the time I think most of the time they would say, "No." "Well, no, of course not." Then I would ask the next question is, "So, where is it that you would like to make changes or still work on something?" And put it back on them.
Yeah.
And, "Well, I'm not sure. What do you think?" And I go, "Well, this is unfortunately, it's not my journey, it's yours. So,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
want me to pick one for you?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's in those moments, it's also, which is basically the question you were just asking is, so where are you hoping to go with this? What is it you're wanting to accomplish that feels like it's plateaued?
Yeah.
Because um, I have to own my own journey, like you do, like any client that comes in. This is your journey, and the whole point of this is to empower the individual to make the kind of change and growth that they
Yeah,
need.
and I will also, depending on how that question gets answered, I've done this several times over the years where I will say, okay, well, we can kind of shift from insight driven change to more supportive therapy. So if
Yeah.
you find value in talking through things, but not necessarily creating great change, or there's not a lot of internal angst, then therapy becomes more supportive and we can just have conversations. And I do that for several of my clients who have a conversation with me they would never have with anybody else because over the years you've developed a safety with them.
Yeah.
And I think there's value. I used to wonder about that because there's so much focus in our culture of progress and change and those things that I think we underestimate just the power of support. Like yesterday, I have a guy, and sometimes we talk about cars, sometimes we talk about state of the world. So many things can take on a supportive type of a relationship. Especially if they're in a difficult marriage or they're married to an addict or something like that. They need a safe space to go and just talk about it.
And I have found that even those what feel like one-off conversations where you're going down a pathway that just seems like a like a human interest story, but an area of their interest, that often it can lead because you know the history, it can lead to a very insightful question
Yeah.
that gets them to go inward again and further that journey.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, different scenario. Instead of a plateauing moment, um, you've got somebody you know that can't afford they're at a point where they can't afford a coach, they can't afford a therapist, and, they certainly can look for a place that does sliding scale of some sort, but let's just say that really, unaffordable. So, what's the suggestion for somebody who's wanting to grow and has to address some issues, but they can't afford that kinda help? What kind of thoughts do you have on that?
It depends on the stability of their life, obviously. So if if their life is somewhat financially stable, but just not capable of providing funds for therapy, and they're motivated, that goes back to what we talked about before, is paying attention to their dreams and investing in that relationship. You have
Yeah.
any others you could add?
I think there are a lot of things that somebody can do that provides relief for some of the stress or anxiety that they have. One is a constant reminder to attempt to stay in the day today, that we have things we
Mm,
ruminate on that's from the past, and we have tons of anxiety about what's going to happen in the future. And if we can acknowledge the things that kind of stir up that past rumination, regrets, guilt, whatever it might be, and then say, but I'm going to live in today and pay attention to my emotions today, my life today, my journey today. Um, Depending on what the need is for a person, I just think there are some simple steps like that that can help somebody who can't afford to go talk to somebody right now, or as often is the case, in between sessions to put into practice some principles
absolutely,
that people
absolutely.
need because it's 2 weeks to my next appointment, or for some people, it's a month to my next appointment.
Right.
And so I
I mean,
think teaching people some practices
yeah,
is
the
always a
other
good thing.
the other thing too is that, if you're a person of faith, there are, churches you can go to, a lot of Catholics will go light a candle. There's those kind of ways to cope as well. It may not do, verbal processing, but it certainly can stay connected to the moment, to your point.
Yep. And one of the reasons that I think dreams are very powerful, some people have referred to them as their nighttime therapist. Every night
Mhm.
it's doing work, whether we pay attention to them or not. But if we realize that dreams often address the emotional weight of the last 2 days, as I said a few minutes ago, that emotional mindfulness is an incredible pathway toward health, paying attention to where my emotions are taking me and what triggers them, and then listening to the dreams as to the insights they might give can be incredibly helpful.
Absolutely, yeah.
the most important thing you can pay attention to for mental health is get a good night's sleep. So whether you see anybody or
And
not. So you were about to say something.
the intangible part of all this, or the real tangible part, is level of interest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Take that a step further, though. The level of interest of the coach or therapist?
No, just generally level of interest. It could be in anything. No, the level of interest by the individual to really know themselves better.
Yeah.
You can't make someone do that, but life circumstances or even dreams can certainly spark that journey. If you have a disturbing dream and you're curious enough about it, it can lead you, as you know, with all the work that you do in that area, can lead you on some really interesting paths.
And likewise, you have a difficult moment in a relationship or vocationally. As you have mentioned, they are wonderful doorways. If you look at them as opportunities to know more about yourself, it changes your whole perspective on how you're approaching life. Oh, that didn't go well. Well, let me reflect on that. I mean, it angered me, or I felt all tense inside, or I was incredibly attracted to that moment or that person, to pay attention to what's going on inside and how it relates to my past, my current bents toward a variety of things, or my future longings. And all of that mindfulness is what we hope we develop in individuals and want for ourselves to live in that way of being curious and proactive in how we live.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, with that, probably a good spot to end. Jim,
Well, it's never a good spot to end, D. We could go on for hours and hours, but it probably is good to not wear out the audience because,
little projections, so you're a little bit worn out. I, I got that message loud and clear.
well, you know, too much self-discovery, you dig a big hole. So,
Sorry I wore you down. And on that note, I'm glad all of you joined us.
thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jim. We'll
All right,
talk
buddy.
again soon.
Yeah, bye-bye.
That's it for this episode of Therapy, Coaching, and Dreams. If you're enjoying the podcast, we'd love for you to follow, rate, or share it with someone who might appreciate it as well. Thanks for being here, and until next time, keep growing, stay curious, and take good care of yourself.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff.